Hello, 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 everybody. I am Stephanie D. Sanders, and we are back with another episode of Movers and Shakers. We're out here talking to people who are actually doing a little moving and shaking in their respective careers. These are some of the people that I call the go-getters in their industries. And I had to have this gentleman on. So connected with him a few days ago, and I had met him a couple of years ago. He is a blind individual and he is an advocate and a former president. So before I get into all that, I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kirk
Sure. Thanks,
Adams.
Stephanie. Did we meet in an airport? Is that
It
where
it
we met?
it wasn't the airport, but it was a hotel where you guys were having a conference,
Yeah,
and we
yeah,
had a
yeah.
meeting at the coffee shop with
Yep.
the lady who was doing community engagement.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, I'm so glad you reached out to me again and we reconnected. Uh, I am Dr. Kirk Adams. I am talking to you from my home office in Seattle, Washington. As Stephanie mentioned, I am blind and have been since age 5 when my retinas both detached when I was in kindergarten. So I went from being a sighted little kid to being a blind little kid just a couple of days. And I went to a school for blind children for first, second, and third grade, the Oregon State School for the Blind. Since I was totally blind, there wasn't any question. I needed to learn Braille. I needed to learn how to travel safely and confidently using the long white cane. I needed to learn how to type. Today it would be keyboarding, but needed to learn how to type so I could go into public school when I was ready back in my hometown and type my assignments and spelling tests and things for my teachers. So I learned all those skills. And I also learned how to be really confident as a little blind kid that had us doing all the stuff kids do. I was with 120 other blind children. They had very high expectations of us. So I was given that gift of high expectations from my school and my family. And not all young children with disabilities are are gifted high expectations. And I was also given this sense of agency or what I call strong internal locus of control, which I really grew to believe deep in my bones that I could figure things out, I could overcome problems and challenges, I could come up with creative ways to do things. So that really set me up to succeed. I went on through public school, fourth grade on, the only blind student in all my schools. I got an academic scholarship to college, did very well there. And then, like so many people with disabilities, had a lot of challenges finding a job. I
Hmm.
decided I had applied to some graduate schools and got in, but I decided I wanted to go to work and marry my college sweetheart, which I did.
Aw.
We'll be married 40 years in September
All right.
and have kids, which we did. We have two grown children and buy a house, sitting in that house right now. So, um, I had a lot of challenges getting a job, but I was offered a sales job to sell tax-free municipal bonds over the phone. I did that for 10 years and made a fine living for a kid in his 20s. And then
Wow.
when I turned 30, I just got really clear that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Mm.
I was basically helping wealthy people get wealthier.
Mm.
And I got really clear. I wanted to help create opportunities for other people with disabilities to succeed and thrive in life, and particularly in employment. So I went into the nonprofit sector. Um, Through fundraising, I became a development officer for the Seattle Public Library Foundation, raising money for the statewide Talking Book and Braille Library. And then I went back to school and got a master's in not-for-profit leadership, and was hired by the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle to start their foundation and their fundraising program. And fast forward eight years, I was given the opportunity to step into that leadership role and become the president and CEO of the Lighthouse, which is a very cool organization. It's a social enterprise that employs blind and deafblind people and businesses, including aerospace manufacturing, making parts for all the Boeing aircraft, blind and deafblind machinists using very sophisticated machining equipment.
Wow.
And then I was recruited to step into the leadership role at the American Foundation for the Blind, which was Helen Keller's organization. She was the brand ambassador for 44 years, and they were in a desperate financial situation,
Mm,
almost 100 years old, but they were having troubles financially. So I was recruited to step in there and turn things around. So my wife and I moved from Seattle to New York City, lived there for a couple of years, and it was at AFB where I met you, Stephanie. I was
yeah.
working there. And then after a couple of years, we relocated the headquarters to the Washington, D.C. area. So we
Hmm.
moved to Arlington, Virginia, and lived there,
Hmm.
and then came back home during the pandemic. And I managed AFB remotely for a couple of years and then decided I was ready for the next chapter. So, um, 3 years ago, I established a consulting practice. It's called Innovative Impact. And I work with companies to help them employ people with disabilities, say to help them supercharge their bottom line through disability inclusion. Because people who live with disabilities every day develop some really unique strengths that employers want, like
Mm,
resilience and perseverance and
yes.
creative problem solving and the ability to work with teams and good communication skills. So I work with companies who are wanting to hire the best, who want to have a enthusiastic, dedicated, loyal workforce.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow, that is a mouthful right there. I was like,
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
one more. I during all this, I started a PhD program when I was at the Lighthouse here and was still in the program when we moved to New York and I moved to AFP. So I finally finished in 2019. So I am Dr. Kirk Adams because I have a PhD in leadership and change. And my
Oh, yeah.
dissertation,
Hmm.
I did an ethnographic study of blind adults employed in large American corporations. So I
Mm,
interviewed a bunch of really cool blind people who work at big companies that we all know the names of, and that self-identified as successfully employed. And I found out kind of the factors that contributed to their successes, the barriers they faced, and the barriers they were still facing. Everyone was still, everyone expressed a pretty decent degree of disappointment that things weren't better, although they themselves consider themselves successful.
hmm. Hmm. Wow, wow. So when you think back to that time when you actually began with AFB and then
Mhm.
moved on through those years, what do you find to be the most proudest accomplishments that you achieved while you were there?
Well, the first and foremost was returning it to a growth path. Helen Keller was a great fundraiser, and many people left AFB in their wills because of her. And we were
Oh.
still getting bequests um, from people who left AFB in their will because of her. But she passed away in 1968, so many of the people she had worked with had also passed away. So the millions and millions and millions of dollars AFB received over the decades started to taper off
Hmm.
in the 90s, then really fell off in the 2000s. And the organization, frankly, didn't adjust enough, and they were consuming the corporate reserve at an alarming level. So I went in and did some very hard things as far as uh, downsizing, laying people off, combining
Hmm.
structures, and finding new homes for some really great programs that weren't a great fit anymore, and sold some buildings and closed some offices. So I did some very hard things. Recruited a lot of new people, and before I left, there were a couple good growth years, so I felt good about that. And the other thing um, among many other things, I created a blind leaders development program
Hmm.
along with other leaders, and we ran it for 3 years, and we had blind individuals who'd been working between 2 and 8 years, but wanted to accelerate their careers. So we based it on a book called The Leadership Challenge by
Hmm.
Kouzes and Postner, and there's a leadership practices inventory that people took to get an analysis of where they were at and as far as being a leader. And we had a certified leadership practices trainer, and we found blind mentors and brought them together. And it was a very intensive, very purposeful program. And it really, really worked because lots of people got promotions, people went to other companies and got better jobs. And it was very successful and very, very excited about that. As I mentioned, my PhD is in leadership and change. I'm really interested in leadership. And as far as people with disabilities go, we're super underrepresented leadership roles. Even organizations, nonprofits that serve people who are blind, the vast majority, their top executive person is not blind.
Mhm.
And so, quite frankly, it'd be like having an organization serving women run by a man,
Mm.
an organization serving African American people run by a white person.
Uh-huh.
It just is not acceptable. And so I really have focused a lot of my efforts on helping support people with disabilities move into leadership.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna talk to you about that one because I really like that one myself. And because sometimes you have mentors and a lot of times people don't. Sometimes people don't ask. I was always one that actually asked for
Uh-huh.
mentors or submitted to people and so forth. But when I hear different things like that, I think I'm a lot more like you in just really extremely self-motivated and to hear certain things like that you are working on programs like that to help the blind community because there are people who are capable of doing
Oh
several
yeah.
things. It's just giving them that opportunity and that education to
Yeah. And
be
there's
able to
lots of
replace them.
reasons, there's lots of reasons for that. It's
Hmm.
not an easy, there's no simple answer.
Hmm.
So, employers have attitudes, they have misconceptions. They've never worked with a blind person before. They don't know what we're capable of, or, the technology we use. Like I use screen reading software to listen to the computer and read in Braille what's on the computer screen. People aren't even aware that that kind of technology exists. And then, we don't get early work experience at the same level as
Hmm.
non-disabled people. So,
Hmm.
you know, something less than 25% of us get any kind of paid work before we're 23 years old, and like 70% of people without disabilities get early work. So even, what a, a first entry level low paying job, babysitting or mowing lawns or working in fast food or, the things young people do. And, then you're going in for a job when you're in your 20s and you don't have anything on your resume. You haven't had any work experience and you're competing with people who have been working.
Right, exactly.
So yeah,
Hmm.
all along the line there are challenges. Our high school graduation rates are lower. Our percentage of us who go to college is lower. The percentage of us who graduate from college is lower. So there's lots of room for people to pitch in at various stages to make things better. I'm not hearing you now, Stephanie.
I was trying to keep from hearing the people out there mowing
Ah, okay. Well, I can't hear it.
more in the lawn. I was talking, and
Oh,
I was like, "You forgot to turn the mic on."
okay.
But anyway, did you find that you had several mentors that you can kind of slide on over there easily to work with to help you along in your journey?
Well, I got to tell you, I was hired by the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle, and I was hired to start the fundraising program in the foundation. I'd been there about 4 or 5 years, and the CEO, who was sighted, a gentleman named George Jacobson, he'd been there over 20 years. He called me into his office and he said, I'm going to retire in about 3 years, and I really want my legacy. I need to have a blind person in this office. I need to have a blind person leading this organization.
Wow.
and we're going to hire a search firm. We're going to do a nationwide search. But would you like to do the work you would need to do in order to become qualified?
Oh my
And I
God.
said, absolutely. And
Yes.
Stephanie, he got a bottle of whiskey out of the bottom drawer and poured us up a little cup, and we toasted, and we said, let's do it. So old school, an old
Right.
school CEO.
That's the
But
old school deals, right?
yeah, but they hired a consultant who went through a process with me where evaluated my knowledge, skills, and abilities against those that I would need to be qualified. And wherever there was a gap, we put together a development plan. And so, you know, big example is aerospace. About a third of the revenue and a third of the jobs were aerospace manufacturing, and I had no experience in that. So
Hmm.
I needed to learn about the aerospace supply chain and the ISO standards for aerospace parts, and sit in on the Boeing contract negotiations. And then they created a position for me called General Manager of Administration, so that HR and marketing and IT and basically everything but manufacturing was reporting to me. So I had that experience. And then they did hire a search firm. I was given that opportunity, was named the president and CEO of the lighthouse there, and was in that role for 8 years before I had the opportunity to have a more national impact by going to the American Foundation for the Blind. Point being, they invested a lot of time and effort and money in me, and they benefited immensely as well because I stepped into that role and was ready for it, and engaged in a strategic planning process that brought everyone together onto the same page. And the 8 years I was there, we grew revenues from 27 million to 95 million. And we grew the number
Wow.
of blind and deafblind employees from 150 to 250. And we increased wages for everybody across the board about 40%. So
Wow.
I did well for them. They did well for me, and it was a win-win.
You went down in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was good.
I know they appreciate that to be able to keep that type of an organization going to help blind people along the way. But
Hmm.
for yourself personally, whenever you have challenges personally, especially being a blind individual,
Hmm.
how do you manage those for yourself when you don't have someone else to kind of lean on at that moment? You have to
Yeah.
internalize first.
Well, I guess as you go through life, well, the way we develop strengths is by overcoming challenges, increasingly difficult challenges. So if you're going
Yeah.
to be a chess champion or a concert pianist or a Olympic athlete, you're going to do that very intentionally, and learn the basics, and then set increasingly difficult challenges, and with a coach or program, and that's how you develop those unique skills. But we, as people with disabilities, as you go from elementary school to high school, out on your own, relationships, work, you are facing increasingly difficult challenges all the time. And since the world is not designed for us with impairments, we have to be really creative and persistent and resilient. So, we develop those strengths to draw upon. And for me, I can look back and say, hey, I figured that out. I can figure this out. Hey,
Hmm.
I made that work. I can make this work.
Yes.
Um, I'm a researcher. There's especially now with the tools we have with the web and search engines, you can find a lot of information about things people have tried and things that worked and didn't work. And you can also network so much more easily now. I mean,
Yeah.
after
Absolutely.
third grade, I was not in school with any other blind people at all from fourth grade through my PhD. And
Oh,
a
how was that?
lot of that was before the internet existed.
Oh, yes, true.
But
Yes, true.
now that we have these tools, you can connect. I tell young blind people, if don't don't think in terms of limits. Think of anything you're interested in. If you want to be an astronaut, find someone who is in the space program who's blind. And there is one. There's
Hmm.
a African American woman named Dina Lambert, who
Mm.
I know, who's a NASA scientist. So
Wow.
she's not flying to space, but she is helping people fly to space. If you want to be an auto mechanic and you're totally blind, you love cars, I know of a blind auto mechanic to talk to. If you want to be a lawyer, a computer programmer, a restaurant owner, um, 98% of all the jobs you can think of, there's a blind person doing it that you can connect with.
Hmm. Now, since the AFB, you have retired. What are you doing in your retirement days here now? Because I know you're not
Oh,
sitting
well,
still.
I haven't retired. I have started a business, a consulting business, and I'm really enjoying it because I have a lot of freedom. It's just me. I have
Hmm.
a virtual assistant. I have some people who help me with social media, and some people I can call on to help with projects. But I am just looking for fun. I say fun, innovative, high impact projects that are going to accelerate inclusion of people with disabilities. And I want to work with people I like. And so I'm working with the biggest program I'm working with is called the Apex program, and the website is theapexprogram.com. And it is a virtual training and certification program to launch blind people into careers in cybersecurity. And I've partnered with a leading cybersecurity company to develop it. And we've got it set up with the vocational rehabilitation agencies in 24 states so they can pay for it. And so we have a nice pipeline of blind people who are going through 10 weeks of training and getting Network Plus and Security Plus certifications, and then getting jobs, entry level jobs in cybersecurity. So that's a great one. And then
Wow.
I
I
have a
love
number
it.
of nonprofit clients. I have a lot of experience in nonprofit boards and fundraising. So a handful of nonprofits that I'm helping them to scale up kind of past the founder stage and become real robust organizations. And do a little public speaking, and I do a little writing, and I do whatever I want to do that I think will make a
Yes.
difference.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. I thank you so very much for joining me today. I mean, see, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I had him on here. I knew he had a plethora of things that he had been involved in, and now to hear all the other things that he's involved in now, I just love it. It's a wonderful thing he's doing, and you guys need to make sure that you stay in contact with him for other things like the cybersecurity
Yeah, and
positions and training and so forth.
I have a website. It's drkirkadams.com, drkirkadams.com, and
Okay.
there's a newsletter. If you want to go and subscribe, or if you want to get in touch with me, either through the website or on LinkedIn. I'm Kirk Adams, PhD on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
that's how we reconnected.
Yes, yes, yes. See, I'll find a way. Like you
Yeah,
said,
you do.
I will find a way to connect. And it's been so great to be able to see you out there again doing your thing and just knowing what you're doing now. And I appreciate the time that you have come on here to talk to people and let them know, hey, you can do this. You can do this. There is
That's
no
right.
excuse.
And you don't have to do it alone. And
Exactly.
you reach out to a person with a disability who's gone before you and gone through
Hmm.
some of this stuff. They're gonna be happy that you contacted them and
Hmm.
eager to share their wisdom.
Yes, and share their knowledge. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, thank you once again so very
Thank
much. And
you.
now, anything else any parting words, anything else that you would like to share with people out there? A word of wisdom would be great.
Um, follow what lights you up. If you're interested in
Whoa.
something, um, go for it. Learn about it. There's an association for every interest under the sun. So
Mhm.
join a group, reach out to other people who share the interest, jump in and be a leader.
Yes. Woo. See, I'm over here clapping, and we don't
All
even have
right.
an audience.
Okay.
Thank you once again.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Stephanie.
everybody, so much for watching this edition of Movers and Shakers. Our wonderful guest today, Dr. Kirk Adams. I knew he was going to have some great stuff to tell us about.
Stephanie
Yeah.
D. Sanders, everybody.
Yes. Oh, and he didn't forget the D in the middle. That is so important, Stephanie D. Sanders. Appreciate you all. Appreciate him. Contact me. I'm all over social media under Stephanie D. Sanders. So if you'd like to reach out, if you'd like to be a sponsor on one of the shows, would love, love, love to have you on here and in between to share whatever you may be offering. And we will see you the next time. Again, I'm Stephanie D. Sanders, and you can reach me at StephanieDSandersActress.com or on all social media platforms. Simply put my name in Google, Stephanie D. Sanders. Thank you. Bye, y'all.